This week on Fighting Fraud with AARP Connecticut, we take you inside the world of imposter scams.
I've seen doctors, we've seen surgeons, we've seen all walks of life that actually send money and end up becoming victimized either by a lottery fraud or by a romance scam.
We give you the red flags to look for when it comes to these criminals. Then, new tactics from scammers can sometimes sound like a completely different language.
Phishing, smishing, and spoofing. What do these words mean? I'll let you know coming up.
Plus, criminals, with their sights set on people who are generous.
Earthquakes, tsunamis, those are definitely trigger events for fraudsters to try to take advantage of people's kind hearts.
A look at charity scams and why you should pay attention to the headlines. And lotteries, sweepstakes, contests. How scammers are using the false promise of fast cash to put money in their own pockets.
Welcome to Fighting Fraud with AARP Connecticut. Today, our show is jam-packed with great information. But first, we'd love to hear from you. Is there a certain scam you'd like us to spread awareness about? Comment below and we'll consider it for a future show. Today, we're talking about all sorts of imposter scams. So, what exactly does that include?
So imposter scams typically, are anybody that is pretending to be somebody else, right? So a lot of times I think one of the most common and unfortunately broad-reaching scams right now is romance fraud. So it's basically anybody that is pretending to be another person. I know that's like so simple to say, but we've seen people who are pretending to be famous people. We've seen people who are pretending to be princes and princesses.
We're seeing more and more often now celebrity social media accounts being hacked. And they're being hacked in order to steal money from people with investment scams. So basically, these scammers are pretending to be these celebrities. They take advantage of all of the followers they have. They really exploit their star power and they say, hey, I've got this great investment opportunity. I'm making all this money on cryptocurrency. You should try it too. And the general public thinks, well, this person is rich. They're famous. They're probably smart. They know what they're doing. I'm going to do this too. I'm going to make some money. Unfortunately, what we don't realize is that it's not the celebrity behind this investment. It's actually a scammer. And they're just trying to steal your personal information and your money.
We've seen people take on regular individuals' lives. For example, a case I was working, we had an individual in Texas who we identified, the real person, and he was a former doctor, and his identity was essentially stolen by the bad guys.
These scams can either be perpetrated in the mail, on the phone, over sort of electronic communications. You're told you won the lottery or some sweepstakes, but you have to pay some taxes. And you often have to pay the taxes up front and in cash, sometimes by check. The person who's being victimized will share how much they need the money, how they're scraping by to send the taxes. And that will just create a connection between the person who is being the fraudster and the victim.
So I think it's important to get that message out there because, a lot of times we speak to victims and, they're devastated in many ways, but a lot of times they're embarrassed and they, are fearful, obviously. The bad guys truly do this as their full-time job. Like I said, this is what they do 24/7, 365 days, because this is their income.
Looking ahead, our episode next month will deal with all sorts of government-specific imposter scam. That means anything to do with Social Security, IRS, veterans. So put it on your calendar. Now, hear how one woman had a run-in with imposter scammers, not once, but twice.
Our organization, our nonprofit, has a event that we have every year, sorry. So it's in a sort of way, so we sell tickets every year. And we hadn't done it because of COVID. And so this was like a special, okay, we're going to start this new thing again. It's going to be at an amusement park and we'll be selling tickets for it. And it was on our webpage. We had a link, and it was on social media. And so we actually sold out. We sold out of tickets. And so one woman, she wanted to bring her family, and her brother-in-law was coming in from Pakistan, and she wrote us this letter on social media saying, I really would like to get tickets. And we emailed back saying, sorry, we're sold out. But in the meantime, somebody else, completely unknown to us, got onto our social media page from I don't know how they did it, but they actually contacted her and said, we actually have 8 tickets available. Right. So what happened was they found out that this person needed 8 tickets, and straight away said, we have 8 tickets ready for you. Please send the money, and we will send it to you. And what happened is they were very tempted. I think they almost sent the money, and then they called the person at our office saying, can we have one more? Thank God. And that's how it was found out. She said, oh my gosh, this person who's got 8 tickets, and and it was obviously a scam. And so these things happen at every level, and we really have to be aware. And when there's any events now, we're very, very we actually put it on our flyer. Please only contact us if you get if anybody else or confirm with us that that the sale is going ahead, or only go through our website, because otherwise there's so many ways of getting scammed. A few years ago, my husband's email was hacked, and he had no idea until somebody called him and said, are you okay? And then he said, yeah, I'm fine. He said, where are you right now? And he said, I'm in Connecticut, So he said, oh, because I got this email that said that you were in Lithuania, and that you had lost your passport, and that you just needed $500 to get to the embassy to get your passport back. So I'm happy to hear that you're okay. But he got a number of calls from friends who had got the same message. And I mean, they were willing to give the money. It was amazing, but because, thank God, they called and checked. So that was a good thing. But then he was able to say, well, actually, I'm fine, ignore these. And then I think he sent his whole list, this email saying, please, ignore anything, especially, about Lithuania, because I'm not there, basically. So that's, yeah. And it was really, I mean, if people hadn't, called him to check, we would have never known. Make sure that your family's okay, of course, but please, report it, because it's so important to deal with these people who are so evil, actually. So please do report it.
She has such an amazing point. These criminals are targeting everyone out there. So let's take a look at some of the red flags to look for when it comes to imposter scams.
The 3 red flags of an imposter scam are someone who you don't know asking for your personal information, an unsolicited text, phone call, email, or social media message from someone purportedly from a business saying there's a problem with your account or you want a free gift, and a stranger asking you to pay a fine or a fee over social media, over a text message, an email, or a phone call. Imposters have 2 main goals: to get your money and to get your personal information.
Great information. Thanks so much. Next up, we see how scammers are using the guise of contests, lotteries, and social media hacking to target new victims.
So a current trend that we're actually seeing is people that have open social media pages, so to speak. They're obviously open and exposed to different people and anybody that wants to see them. So because of that, the bad guys will sometimes look at the individual's friends list, or who they're following, or whatever the case may be, and then they will mimic a page to look just like your friend. And then with that page, they will reach out to you and just start small chat. And then all of a sudden it turns into, hey, I just won, X, Y, and Z lottery. I just won $250,000 or $1 million. Here's a website that you should check to see if you're a winner too. And when that happens, obviously you're a quote unquote winner, and you start potentially sending money for taxes and fees in order to get your winnings, so to speak. And I think it's important to maybe lock down, social media a little bit more, keep it a little more private than, letting the world see everything, because that is definitely a current trend that's happening. So young people are not immune to this fraud either. So they're doing what's called card cracking, where they're going on social media, making friends with people, flashing cash, and basically asking people to open bank accounts for them. Again, it's a little bit of, an imposter type of situation where you may think like you're friends with somebody on social media. It doesn't mean you're actually friends with that person. And it doesn't mean that that person actually has your best interest at heart either.
Another example of an imposter scam is one we've mentioned before. It's the grandparent scam. But we could all use a refresher since this scam is very common. Kristen is here to tell us about one Connecticut woman who was targeted.
A grandmother in Connecticut was recently targeted by a grandparent scam. Someone claiming to be her granddaughter called her on the phone and said that she had caused an accident that resulted in a pregnant woman being hospitalized. She claimed that she had been taken to the police station, and then she actually put a second person on who said he was her lawyer and that she needed over $15,000 to make bail. Well, the granddaughter didn't really sound like her granddaughter, so she asked her why, and when she pressed her, she said it was because of COVID. So then the grandmother said, okay, tell me something that only you and I would know. And she couldn't. So at that point, the woman hung up. Then she called the police and her granddaughter. And of course, her granddaughter confirmed that she was not in a bad accident. And the police told her this was the second grandparent scam that they had been notified about that day.
Coming up in a few minutes, Kristen will be back to talk about new terminology when it comes to scams. Things like phishing, smishing, and spoofing? But first, let's take a look at how some criminals are using fake charities to commit fraud.
We do tend to find a lot of times if there's a natural disaster or a big event going on in the world that fraudsters will tend to take advantage of that. Obviously, the war in Ukraine has been a big one. There's been a lot of small little charitable organizations that have just kind of like popped up and donate to here and we're going to help the people in Ukraine, or donate to this one and we'll help the animals in Ukraine, or we'll help the children in Ukraine. So that's just something you have to really be kind of careful with. Because you have to do a little bit of digging sometimes to make sure that they are legitimate, but they do tend to really pop up when there's something big going on. Same thing with natural disasters, hurricanes. We all remember all the charitable organizations that now pop up after hurricanes or flooding or anything like that, earthquakes, tsunamis. Those are definitely trigger events for fraudsters to try to take advantage of people's kind hearts.
Other instances are when they use websites. Sometimes they will spoof, a website or a phone number to add validity. I've seen on the news where local law enforcement phone numbers are being used to contact victims and say that they're doing some fund, gathering, or the fire department to try to collect money for the fire department. And you'll see the news report saying that's actually not us, even though the phone number matches because of spoofing technology.
We usually will put out a press release just to be aware that there will be organizations popping up purporting to be benefiting, would it be victims of these tragedies, and just to maybe do a little bit of research before you make a donation. And there's different ways you can do that. In Connecticut, you can contact our Department of Consumer Protection, just a general information line, and ask if the organization is registered within the state. You can also go on the IRS's website. They have a tax exempt organization check, and that will allow you to check to see if they are a IRS identified, verified, tax exempt charitable organization.
Next up, You've heard people in this episode mention spoofing, but other words like smishing and phishing are common in fraud too. Kristen is back to tell us what these words mean and what to look out for.
Spoofing is when a scammer uses a spoofed caller ID to get you to pick up the phone. So oftentimes it will look like a local number, perhaps even a number you know, and there's just enough interest there that makes you want to pick up the phone. Unfortunately, that scammer is actually overseas. They can even spoof real government agency phone numbers. So you can't trust your caller ID because they're able to buy lead lists with your name and your phone number and then harness special technology that allows them to make these phone calls with internet rather than real phone lines. So phishing is with a PH, not an F, and they are literally trying to get your personal information so they can steal your identity. So they're looking for your social security number, your bank account information, your credit card information, your name, your address, your phone number, your birth date, any information that they can pair with the information that's already out there, put it together and steal your identity. Unfortunately, because of data breaches, there's a lot more information about us out there than we realize. And if they have just a little bit of information off the internet or off the dark web, and then they get a little bit more information from you, they can put it together and that's all they need to steal your identity. Smishing is a combination of spoofing and phishing. They're sending fake text messages, pretending to be someone else to try to get your personal information.
With all the ways to text or call as someone else or hack into his social media profiles, it really shows that these criminals will go to nearly any lengths to scam people. Which reminds me, if you or someone you know has been targeted, it is not your fault. There is help out there. Remember, if you've heard of a scam in your area, or if you're targeted, call the AARP Fraud Watch Network helpline at 877-908-3360. So, together, we can catch these cons and flip the narrative when it comes to shame surrounding being a victim. Thank you so much for joining us today on Fighting Fraud with AARP Connecticut. Make sure to like and subscribe and check back for new episodes.
Join us for events in your community. Go to aarp.org/CT events and look for the Con Artist Playbook.